Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. And today we are speaking with Mahan Tavakoli. Mahan is the CEO of Strategic Leadership Ventures. He's also the founding executive director for Genesis Works, the National Capital Region, a top 10 management thought leader, along with me on Thinkers 360, and fellow podcaster, which he has his own show. We'll talk about that a little later on. He partners with clients to create and implement effective strategies, align and collaborate with their teams, and communicate and engage with their stakeholders. Mahan, welcome to the show.
Enrique, I am excited and thrilled to be with you as we have interacted with each other over the past couple of years. I've learned from you and look forward to this conversation.
Oh, I've definitely learned from you, brother, and I'm thankful for you to share this topic with me today. And folks, we will be speaking about unlocking team synergy. And I know that's interesting for a lot of people, secrets to effective collaboration and success. But Mahan, before we get into that conversation, tell us a little bit about you.
So, Enrique, I'm right outside of Washington, D.C., in Montgomery County, Maryland. Most of my life has been in the greater Washington, D.C. region. I'm very committed in and very active in the community and to the community. I've worked for leadership development and in leadership development most of my career, 20 plus years at Dale Carnegie Training. And then for the past half a dozen or so years, working with clients primarily focused out of the Washington, D.C. region on working with the CEOs and their leadership teams. So it's been an exciting journey. It's been great working with the clients. And you mentioned the podcast. It's outstanding as I know you do to have conversations with people and learn from them and stay at the edge of leadership and what works for organizations because that's what helps us bring value to our clients. So that's what I've been up to, learning from outstanding people like yourself as well, Enrique.
Oh, well, thank you for saying so. And indeed, we learn so much when we have these conversations. When you talk about constructing an environment where teams thrive, you're at the pinnacle of the place where a lot of leadership resides, right, for our nation. And I'm sure you've had some great conversations with those in and around your community and through your podcast. But I wanted to start off by asking what strategies have you found most effective in fostering open communication within teams?
Enrique, first and foremost, I repeatedly say that leadership is example. So, to that end, the way to make sure that your team is open and communicating openly is for the leader to set an example of that. So, example starts it out. And in order to do that well, one of the things that I've seen over my career working with executives, CEOs of some top organizations globally is that as we move up in organizations and as we gain more experience, our blind spots tend to grow. People tend to become more hesitant to disagree with us. They tend to become more hesitant to give us honest, open feedback as we move up in the organizational hierarchy. Therefore, if leaders want to have transparent, open communications in their teams, they need to recognize those blind spots that they have, seek feedback, and serve as an example of the kind of open communications they want others to embrace. So, first and foremost, it's example, being mindful that doesn't matter how much we think we ask for open feedback, it's likely that people are hesitant to be as open with us. Therefore, we need to actively work on it on a consistent basis.
I agree with that. And thank you for bringing up the blind spots, right? Blind spots normally cause friction, they cause conflict because it is the gap between what the leader thinks and what the people know, right? It's one of those things that just really get in our way in terms of leadership. So, how can leaders handle conflicts or disagreements among team members to ensure they are resolved constructively, and especially when it deals with them?
Enrique, a couple of things to keep in mind is first of all, is that having a growth mindset, both for the leader and the team, is really important. I love and refer repeatedly to the example that Satya Nadella set in turning around Microsoft. 2014, Microsoft was, by all accounts, an organization on the decline. You fast forward 10 years later, it keeps competing with Apple for the most valuable company in the world. NVIDIA recently passed them. We put that aside. The reality is that growth mindset is a big part of it. Another thing that I'm a big advocate of in handling conflict is that relationships and trust make a difference. So, a lot of times, the leadership teams that I work with, they're made up of very competent individuals that have had much success in their organizational uh, leadership and in moving up in the organization, but they don't always necessarily have the strongest relationships with each other. So that's a second point. And the third one, I am a big advocate and love what has become associated with Jeff Bezos: disagree and commit. There is disagreement that has to be part of every conversation of substance. We don't always, in leadership teams, when I work with them on their strategy, don't always agree. Consensus is not the goal. The goal is to have the kind of environment where people have a growth mindset, are willing to challenge each other, associated with psychological safety, and are willing to disagree and commit to the final outcome of the conversation. That ends up reducing the conflict when they have positive working relationships.
Absolutely. And speaking about challenging moments and disagreements, can you share some example of a challenging moment or project that you and a team worked on and how collaboration played a role in its success?
A couple of things. One of the clients that I'm working with right now is the CEO believes that generative AI will have a significant impact on the organization. However, there are a couple of the leadership team members who are very concerned about data privacy and other issues and are wanting to slow walk things until they are more sure of where all of this is headed. So there's been a lot of conflict in that. Part of what we've done is get people in a room to better understand the technology, so it's not something that is just assigned to folks that work with the technology in the IT division of the organization or the data. Some of the senior team members are involved. And as a part of being involved, they are moving things along to the point where we can disagree and commit. Not everyone will be 100% on board, but on board enough to see that a level of experimentation is essential in moving things forward. So I'll mention one other thought along this is that for a long time organizations have been used to coming up with strategic plans and strategic initiatives that are years in planning and then in execution. Part of what this fast pace of change has required us to do, and is what I've been working on with clients, is to come up with experiments, hypothesis, smaller scale, lower risk experimentation in order to then move these strategies forward. In this client's case, it is generative AI. So that's a way to minimize risk and be much more nimble and agile rather than debate for years on end and then be left behind as a result in a very fast changing environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just mentioned technology, and one of the greatest and fastest things moving in any of the ecosystems that we work in is the technology around AI. So, what other tools or technologies that you have experimented or have seen that you find are indispensable for enhancing team collaboration?
So I will mention generative AI one more time because I think in the vast majority of cases, people are not using its full capabilities. I will mention one of those case examples that I use with clients before mentioning a couple of other tools. One of the case examples is having the leadership team meetings and some of our strategy conversations recorded through some of the tools, and then interacting with generative AI to generate additional thoughts, opposing views, supporting examples, opposing examples. So it's not just an individual or a group of individuals working with generative AI or the organization's data. All the conversations we're having, we can then use generative AI as a cognitive sparring partner. That's what I'm using with clients as they are debating their strategy. Now, a couple of other things. I've been uh, amazed at the number of hours many clients and many organizations spend in meetings. The latest data shows around 23, 24 hours a week is spent by knowledge professionals in meetings. And vast majority of them, people would say, are a waste of time. Therefore, I'm a big advocate for asynchronous communication and using asynchronous communication tools. So things that can be communicated and need to be captured through something like Slack or project management tools like Asana. I push organizations to do that rather than just schedule meetings. We've had a couple of organizations that have encouraged them and they've declared meeting bankruptcy, in essence, wiped everything clean, and have had to rethink, do we actually need to have these 5, 10, 20, however many people in this meeting or not? Are there other ways to share information? So, the three things that I highly encourage people to do is one, think more deeply about the use of generative AI. Number two, use asynchronous communication tools such as whether it's Microsoft Teams or I mentioned Asana. And number three, make sure that knowledge is captured in some of those tools as well.
Yeah, great tools to have at your side, especially if you're trying to streamline some of the things as in meetings. Lord knows that I stood in the back of the room or in the middle of the table, just observing how a waste of time that those meetings were at a particular stage in life, but how ineffective the leaders were being by just standardizing a time where people just got together arbitrarily. There was nothing really happening. So I encourage as well for all those listening that if you have an opportunity to harness technology in a way that will make you more effective and efficient as far as your teams, by all means do it. Your teams will thank you not only now, but forever for doing so.
One of the things I would encourage listeners to do is to challenge their thinking because the vast majority of CEOs, leadership teams, executives I interact with, they nod and they agree, but then they come up with a whole host of excuses, what I call excuses. They say reasons why, for their position, for their team, in their organization, they need those meetings. I would encourage people to counter that view and learn from people like Leidy Klutz, who's a professor at UVA, multidisciplinary professor, has written an outstanding book on subtract and the power of subtraction, where subtraction can actually add value, most especially to something like meetings. now with virtual technologies such as Zoom, it's become really easy to schedule meetings so people don't give it a second thought. And then they come up with reasons why in their organization they should continue doing it that way. So I encourage people to challenge that thinking and see how they can drastically reduce the number of hours people are spending in meetings. If you think about the sums of money that are spent on the salaries of the people in those meetings, it's incredible the waste that takes place in organizations. So that is one thing I challenge everyone, not just to nod and agree that that's a problem generally for organizations, but for us, we need to continue our meetings. But I would challenge all listeners, you can also drastically reduce the number of meetings you hold with your team, your organization. Find out how you can do that.
I agree. Now, you just reminded me of something I used to do when we would gather for meetings. I would take a tally of everybody in the room and average their daily pay, sum it all together, and put it on the board as a reminder. As a reminder, because I was privy to that information, I would put it on there as a sum total, and nobody would know who's what. But as a sum total for the room, they would see and reflect on the amount of salary for that hour that was being up for grabs if we were not effective and efficient. Believe me, we streamline real quick, because then the CEO and COO would look and say, hold up now. We're burning through our cash by doing these things and being less effective. So thank you for those examples. It definitely took me back to one of those days. Now, talking about positions, CEO, COO, whatever you may put as an executive title, leadership is known to be influence, right? Influence equals leadership. And we hear it several times with different speakers, but often that influence is brought on by inspiration. You have to inspire some people to say, hey, this guy might know something, or this guy might know something too. Let me go see what that's about and follow them for a while. So, in your experience, how can leaders best support and inspire their teams to work collaboratively towards common goals?
I love the way you framed it there, Enrique, in that influence is becoming even more important than before, as much of the positional power that's traditionally been associated with leadership has moved away and is no longer working for leaders. So that influence is really important. And to that end, I believe there are a couple of things that are critical. One is that there is a level of trust, faith, and confidence in the individual leader that plays a role in that influence. Therefore, that's why leaders do need to be more authentic and show more vulnerability so their people can see them, understand them, understand them being transparent, and feel like they can trust them more. We are willing to do a lot more, go a lot further for an individual that we connect with, we understand, we believe in. So leaders need to understand that it's no longer the title, it is the individual. And ask yourself, are my people willing to follow me, and what can I do to make it easier for my people to trust me and to want to follow me? That's where that authenticity, genuine vulnerability comes into play. Second to that, I do believe purpose matters. And this is why then how leaders communicate what they are in for, what they are trying to do together, accomplish as a team or as an organization makes a huge difference. Because we all do want to get some meaning from the work that we are doing. We want to contribute. Therefore, we become more motivated if we feel a sense of purpose coming from achieving the team and organizational goals. So I think those two things can play a significant role in helping people feel motivated to do their best in their roles and for the organization.
Absolutely. And once again, you jog my memory to a question I used to ask when I was asking for collaboration. I would always ask, "Are you willing?" And if I got a yes, that meant two things. The person was really interested in doing what it was to get where we needed to go. But more importantly, they did not answer yes if they did not trust. If they could not put their trust in the fact that I was leading them somewhere, it would be a no. And there had been some no's. I'm gonna tell you right now, right? But there were a lot of yeses. But I always asked that because I wanted to know that that journey was a willing journey. I wasn't trying to force something on someone that they were not ready to do. And a lot of leaders are not really taking into account whether they're forcing or not. They just want things done. But it's very important. You mentioned trust, right? It's very important for a leader to get that nod, to get that affirmation in terms of their people, because it makes the journey a whole lot easier. So thank you for sharing that and for jogging those memories as we were speaking. Now I know that you speak, you do workshops, you train, you teach, and all these things. You got the podcast, so pretty busy in that regard. But I know that some of the listeners here today have found some of your comments to be not only insightful but intriguing, and would like to know more about what's going on with Mahan. So, what do you have coming up, and how can the listener or viewer get a hold of you?
Enrique, I am very active on LinkedIn and happy to connect with people who want to contribute to the conversation as you have for the couple of years we've been involved together. So happy to contribute back to them, happy to hear their thoughts. Mahantavakoli.com is the website, more information there. And Partnering Leadership is the podcast. On a weekly basis, I have conversations with some of the top leadership thinkers and strategy thinkers. I've had Ken Blanchard, Stephen Covey, people like Paul Daugherty and Ajay Agrawal on the AI side. So lots of brilliant thinkers that I learn from and share as well with the community. So I look forward to learning more from your community and engaging, because I think we're going through exponential changes in part as a result of exponential technologies such as AI. So we can, as a community, support each other, help each other, and help learn as we try to contribute back to our organizations and our community as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And folks, we'll have all the information you need to get a hold of Mahan, his podcast, and anything that he has coming up through the video and show notes. So stay tuned for those. And I want to remind everybody today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, The Outlier Project, and Duco. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that we can add to our show. So if you know someone or have a topic that you would like featured on the podcast or want to sponsor our show, let us know by leaving a email at Triad Leadership Solutions at gmail.com. And this podcast is brought to you by StreamYard, a browser based tool that lets you live stream to any platform and record podcasts in studio quality. And we use it to record this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.